So a while back we made a video for the Facebook page and it got a lot of response, and I thought just over the past couple of weeks maybe we should make the same video for the YouTube channel. And what it was about was how to spin your pen. And I first encountered the pen spin. Let me just show you what I'm talking about in case you're not familiar with it. I first encountered that back in the mid-1980s. We used to call it back then the Bel Air spin, and there was a debate team. I'm from Texas. There was a debate team at Bel Air High School in Houston, and we just assumed from the name of the spin that they were the ones who introduced it. I've since heard that it is widely practiced, or used to be, in Taiwan, and school kids just teach it to one another along with a number of other pen spinning tricks. And at some point, someone came over from Taiwan, either on an exchange or because the family relocated, and they brought the pen spin with them, and it got introduced into debate because debaters have all kinds of adrenaline, all kinds of nervous energy, and they also handle pens a lot. And you put the two together, and it became a little marker of coolness and a little marker of inside identity. If you could do it, then debaters would spot each other in between debate tournaments. And I have friends who are now law professors who say they can always spot the debaters in the incoming class of law students because they're the ones who in class will sit there and spin their pens. And so I used to work summers at the Baylor Debate Camp, and we would not teach pen spinning as part of the actual formal curriculum because a lot of coaches would have been very annoyed with us. They considered pen spinning a bad habit, which it is. And if you're watching this video and you're going to try to learn how to spin your pen, be aware that you've got to discipline yourself or you'll do it at very inappropriate moments and let it become a distraction. You have to guard against that. But we would teach it. We would teach it at night, and we would pass it around by word of mouth, that if you came to a certain dorm room, there would be a college debater there who would show you how to spin your pen. And very often that college debater was me. I taught that little set of lessons, that little clinic, on more than one occasion. So here are the very basics of pen spinning. To begin with, you got to find the right weight of pen to learn on. I found that these Bics are actually really, really easy to spin. You may notice that I've taken the clip off and put it, or the cap, I've taken the cap off and put it on the back because that lengthens it a little bit, but the pen is still the same weight. So the weight is good, the length is good. You may find that if you experiment with different writing utensils you have around the house, that there's something else that feels really good in your hand and is easy to balance, and you can get the right force, the right, not too much force, but not too little force very, very easily. But this is a recommendation I have. If you have one of these, this is probably, this I have found is well suited to it. So the first thing is you use these three fingers. Use the pointer finger, the middle finger, and the thumb. And you have to start off holding it like this. Now, when I would teach this in the dorm rooms at debate camp, about half the people in the room would do this. So I would have to look around at each of them to make sure they were holding it right. This is not right because the long part of the pen needs to point away from your middle finger. Then, I have heard it described as a snapping motion, and that does indicate the directions that your three fingers move, but it's not hard. A snap is pretty hard. It's very gentle. And I have found that it begins with the pointer finger, the index finger, falling back. That's kind of the first motion. Although really, it all happens pretty simultaneously. The pointer finger falls back, the middle finger pushes, and it pushes the pen around. Like that. That was pretty wobbly. Let me see if I can get a slightly tighter one. That's a little bit better. That's pretty good. And what you initially, I have all kinds of pens lined up because when you're doing this and someone's watching you and you're on the spot, you're of course going to drop them a lot. What you initially will do is you'll either use too much force or too little. If you use too little, the pen just kind of dribbles out of your hand. And if you use too much, it goes flying. And one warning I have to give you is after the first time you spin it successfully, if you're like me, you're going to have a craving to get it to where you can do it reliably, and so you'll spin it all the time. And mostly I just annoyed my teachers. But one time I was in Algebra 2 and the teacher was walking toward me because a student sitting near me had asked a question. So the teacher was walking up to that student to address the question. And at just the wrong moment, I spun my pencil way too hard and it went flying and it hit her right in the forehead. And I got sent to the principal's office because her first impression was I just picked up my pencil and threw it at her. And I explained it to the principal, and then I came back and I apologized to her and explained it to her, and she just sort of rolled her eyes a little bit and said, "Don't do that in my class." So you really have to be careful because it really can be kind of disruptive and intrusive if you do it at the wrong moment. There are variations on spinning your pen. If spinning it horizontally is no longer exciting, I have known a few people who would spin it vertically. And so you can practice that particular trick. And then for the other variation, I can't do the other variation if my forearm is up the way it is for you to see it on camera. So I have this gigantic Amazon box here. I no longer remember what came in this, but I have to prop my arm on because the other variation is to spin it back and forth, sometimes called the double spin. And so the way you do that a little bit differently, the way you learn to do it is spin with this finger, spin with the fourth finger, and then what you're going to do, you got to practice spinning, and instead of letting it just fall into the cleft between your index finger and your thumb, you got to catch it on the thumb tip and fingertip. So let me see if I can do this. A little bit like, that went flying, a little bit like that. And then you will practice, it's kind of a scratching motion. And did you notice that the pen started back around? And if you practice the two together, you get to where you can go back and forth. Now the problem with this one is you can get to where you don't just go back and forth once, you can keep going back and forth, and people will sometimes get to spinning and it'll be triple spinning and quadruple spinning and round and round and round it'll go, and you can forget that you're doing it. And my college teammates had a story they told on me that one night when I had pulled a couple of all-nighters in a row and I was just mortally tired, I was sitting, I was waiting on something or thinking about something, and the pen was going back and forth around the thumb, and I put my head down, and they said that my breathing actually slowed down and got really even, and the pen was still spinning. And I don't think that's true, because when you fall asleep, your muscles go slack, and I think I was probably just resting my eyes, but it does make kind of a good story. So this is the other thing that I do, which I just spontaneously started doing. I picked this up actually after I was done with debate, and it's very, very simple. You just put it between these two fingers, between your third and fourth finger, and then the motion is just, it's like that. And when you figure out the angle, it helps if you start with the cap with the end of the pen between your forefinger and thumb for a little bit of resistance, just so you pop it a little bit as it first starts to go around. Now the problem with this one is this, more than anything, it spins even faster than the other spins. And I have for years graded student speeches, and I'll be sitting back there, and between comments my pen goes round and round, and they'll make too much eye contact with me, and I tell them, spread your eye contact over the room, and they say, but you've got that twirling pen and it just draws my attention every time. So this is my, what am I up to, my fourth or fifth warning that you can get to where you do it without noticing it. And so you have to be very, very strict and discipline yourself so that it doesn't become something that's obnoxious. It doesn't become something that's out of place. But those are the basics of how to do the forward spin, do the spin vertically if that's what you want to do, learn how to do the double spin, and learn how to do the twirl between your fingers. And there are lots of variations on twirling them. I just showed you the one that I happen to have a little bit of attachment to. But it is a marker that kind of identifies you as part of the community of debaters, the United States debaters at any rate, and it is, in some ways, kind of harmless fun, and you can learn to do it with larger things. I sometimes will spin the dry erase markers. This being Oregon, I once in a while will spin my umbrella, or we'll go out for sushi and I'll spin my chopsticks, chiefly because no matter how many warnings I give you, and no matter how old I get, I still have difficulty giving the fidget up and knowing when to put a lid on it so that it doesn't become a distraction. So be careful before you start, because it can be hard to stop.